So Matt Rhule has been fired by the Carolina Panthers. Breaking news. Where's he going?
Time to get out, see if there's any flights from Charlotte to Lincoln today.
Like what are the odds that he's in or not in college football? I mean, it has to be like minus 400 to yes, right? I mean, Matt Rhule, especially not having a job and being able to be not just somebody who has a good resume from the college ranks, but also is going to be available to come in and start working right away, trying to put together a staff, trying to put together a support staff, getting your recruiting operation going so that you don't get totally dusted during the early signing period. But Matt Rhule's in college football, right?
Mm-hmm.
No question about it?
I think so.
If he wants it.
Oh, man.
Shouldn't he? Because I don't think.
Yeah, he should. But, I mean, you just never know.
Right now, like, what NFL team is going to be hiring him to be a head coach?
I'm just saying we always assume what people want to do. If he wants to coach, then he'll be in college, right? I mean, he could always sit out a year. The guys at ESPN have a real good relationship with him. He could be a broadcaster for a year. But if he wants a job, there will be multiple suitors for him. I think what's also interesting is, like, what's the over-under on the date? Like, is it hired before the end of the season at one of these schools? Do they implement him in November?
Well, they wouldn't have him coach because we've had this experience. I know we see it with bowl games where they're around for the bowl practices. I think Thanksgiving, like maybe they're there for the season finale, but I don't think you would make the hire before. I don't think you would make the hire before November 23rd.
Isn't that what this is all? Isn't that why we're firing people, to get in front of the next guy, like to get it quickly? Clay Helton was hired at Georgia Southern last year, November 2nd.
Yep. Which
is kind of wild. That's why I think the timeline is interesting, because we haven't seen it before, but obviously we haven't seen this many coaching firings take place this early in the season. And the thought is they want to be get the head start on everybody else. So I wonder if somebody pulls the trigger on a coach faster than we've seen before. And I'm not saying he's going to be in there on Saturday coaching, but to put together a staff, to start recruiting, to do all the ancillary stuff, I think you might see it sooner than that Thanksgiving.
What kind of impact do you think that would have on the team this current season? Like if Nebraska announced they're cool about it. They wait a week or two because they don't want to make it look like they were negotiating with him while he was still at Carolina. But like Nebraska announces in 2 weeks that it's hired Matt Rhule. What does Mickey Joseph's staff do for the rest of the season, and how do the players respond to that when they all know that no coach on that staff is going to be back next year? Why the hell do I need to listen to a word he's saying?
Because the next guy's watching and you know who it is.
Yeah.
Like that was, now that the college football is becoming more like the NFL, that was something I heard. I was on the Falcons my middle 2 years, and we were bad. And, we were out of the playoffs the last month of the season. And that was something Dan Reeves used to always kind of hold over your head was, hey, I might be getting fired, but you're on film, and other people are watching you. And I think that's what you would have to try to sell is both, hey, maybe it's not even here. Maybe you enter the transfer portal, but if you want to go somewhere else, you better play hard, finish the year here. And by the way, there's this guy watching tape of you guys, to see if he wants you around. So you might as well try to impress him.
But does not every coach come in the door and say, all right, it's a fresh start for everybody?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Nebraska already had the fresh start. Scott Frost nuked the staff and went to the transfer portal to build a new team from scratch. The Nebraska example is certainly going to be one where I would be questioning motivation, considering where all those players are in their respective careers. Would be very interesting to see. Did y'all see Ricky's comment from the chat, by the way? I mean, just a real banger. He said Matt Rhule in the NFL was 10-0 when they held teams under 17. He was 1-27 when teams scored more than 17 points. And Ricky adds, the Big Ten West seems right up his alley.
Listen, I think he would be great for Nebraska. I think he's what Nebraska needs. He's not like some big flashy going to come in and he's going to really recruit really well and give him high recruiting rankings. He's going to identify players, identify talent, develop the talent, and win games. That's what he did at Baylor. It's what he did at Temple. It's what Nebraska needs. They don't need somebody with an offense or with recruiting acumen. They need somebody who knows how to build a football program.
Here's an interesting question for you. Leipold or Rhule if you're Nebraska?
Me, I want Leipold. But I also don't want Leipold to leave Kansas.
But if you had that option and you knew you could limit, I would take Leipold too.
Do we think it's close?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not
it's
trying to
close.
dismiss Rhule. My preference is Leipold.
That's a preference.
Mhm.
There's also,
Yeah.
too, things have changed dramatically, even in the short time since Matt Rhule has left. There's a lot of things he will have to adjust to back to college level that Lance Leipold has won in the middle of all this change.
So does
Yeah.
maybe Arizona State make more sense, or a job that's not yet open but might be by a week from right now?
I mean, he has $40 million coming to him from the Panthers. That there is also the option that he doesn't want to get back into college coaching immediately, not because he wants to take a break, but just because he doesn't find the spot that he wants. Right.
Absolutely. That's why I was like, he could spend a year in broadcasting like Chip Kelly. You go to the NFL, doesn't work out, sit out a year, kind of survey the landscape. When you're in it, you get to kind of really dive into all the different schools, the different options, and then handpick one that you like the best.
Is it Mullen is from New Hampshire, right? Originally?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, he's up. He's a Northeast guy.
Oh man, let's let Mullen and
Yeah.
Rhule just chirp back at each other. Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, just get it all going. That whole vibe. Oh, you got to check tape. Got to check tape. So
He's living in Atlanta though now. I'm pretty sure.
Who, Mullen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where I think that's where his son plays high school ball, and he's posting these videos of him doing wakeboarding and stuff, living the buyout life, enjoying it.
Would Rhule work at Auburn?
It's an interesting question. Auburn's a fishbowl, man.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think he'd get nearly the amount of time he would need. And I think that's Auburn's problem. I think they need somebody to kind of come in and rebuild that thing. And nobody's going to get the amount of time there.
That's one of the things Nick did successfully at Bama. Like, I think he was able to play on Bama's desperation, right? Because they had gone through so many coaches, and they had just had the NCAA scandal as well with Albert Means about 7-8 years prior. And he was able to get in there and just say, leave me the hell alone.
Mhm.
Let me do my thing, right? Like I got up there and publicly said, I will not be the next Alabama coach. And then, I mean, Danny could probably say however long later it was, he was the Alabama coach. But when you hold out like that, you can gain a lot of leverage. So I think that's kind of what Auburn needs in some ways, right? As a guy to say, hey, like, get the hell out of my way. But also somebody who understands that you cannot outcoach other teams in the SEC. You will not outdevelop them. You will not outcoach them. You need to get similar quality players. That's why Harson's going to get fired, because he was not set up to succeed in the SEC by his recruiting approach, right? And I don't know the guy's a bad coach, but like he was a very bad recruiter at that level. So, yeah.
Auburn keeps rearranging the furniture instead of fixing the house's foundation.
That's why I think they will hire an AD before they hire their new head coach. Like they need an AD to kind of keep some of these folks in check.
So what's the order of operations? Do you think it's fire coach, hire AD, hire coach, or is it
Yes.
hire AD, fire coach, hire coach?
I think you want to clean slate it with the AD. So you fire the coach first, then you get the AD in there. One of the interesting Auburn questions, and I talked to an Auburn guy this weekend, as you guys know, because we're trying to figure out, like, do we need to be ready this Sunday or next Sunday? Or
Can
I mean,
I go to the pumpkin patch safely without ruining my chance to be able to?
Does your wife want to take fall photos on a Sunday? Which day are we not going to have to, go rush home to do an Auburn fired emergency pod? Next Sunday, I think is probably not the right day to go take those fall photos. Look, one of the problems is, who do you make the interim at Auburn? Because
the coach? Oh, Cadillac.
Okay, but he has no head coaching experience.
Doesn't matter.
Like, yeah.
And the other issue is, I mean, the coordinators are both Harsin Boise guys, because remember Mason was like, I'm getting the hell out of here. This place is a disaster. Do you want that? Or, I mean, in theory, you could just let Harsin play out a little bit longer and then just get everybody a little bit madder at him. You're not going to win games either way. They just lost 2 more offensive linemen last week, by the way, which, do you want to put that on Cadillac? Are those coordinators going to listen to Cadillac? Because if I'm Keesaw or who's the other guy, I'm not listening to Cadillac Williams. That guy's never been a head coach, never been a coordinator. He doesn't really run a room.
I think
if you get really weird,
if you put Cadillac in a position where he's running the team, but you're letting the coordinators coordinate, I think that would work.
I think interim coach is a job any one of us could do. Everything's already streamlined. Schedules are in place. You take care of the offense. You take care of the defense. I'll handle the media and game day decisions. Let's go. Bam.
That was made for me. Yeah.
Right.
Vibes. Yeah.
There's a reason Ed O just absolutely thrives at it.
Right.
That's fair.
Yeah. So the home games left, they play at Ole Miss this weekend. Then they've got Arkansas at home when they return from an off week on October 29th. And the fact that we are approaching the off week is why so many have circled after the game against Ole Miss as a spot when they might make a move on Harsin. Then it is at Mississippi State, Texas A&M at home, Western Kentucky at home, and then the Iron Bowl in Tuscaloosa. I see 2 wins max.
I said 2. Hopefully.
Yeah, I mean that max.
Yeah.
Would not go much farther than that, but we are continuing to track that. Is there any? Have we mentioned? Would Rhule take Georgia Tech?
No.
Well,
I've got one thought.
I'll tell you that might be in play for the interim for Brent Key to win that job. I mean, they've got 2 wins.
2 wins.
I saw something. I didn't see the game, but they said it was getting more crowded. Like if you start getting some fan interest and get fans in the stands, he might be somebody that could play himself or coach himself into a job, which I think
it was rocking. I'm not saying that sarcastically.
Right. No, he was
rocking.
Fired up. They want, if they find some enthusiasm around him, I think you should give the interim coaches, if there's a response like that, you should absolutely give them first in line for the job interview process. I'm not saying you hand it to them, but you might have something there that you can get. And, because when you do change, you start over, you start from scratch, which maybe what Georgia Tech wants. And also you find out what's out there for real.
If they had not hired or if they had not fired the AD, I could buy the idea of Key getting the job. I do not think, because they're going to have to go hire a new AD who's going to have a new vision. He's not going to hitch his wagon to the interim from the old staff. But basically, as a rule, I don't mean that as an intentional pun. Like, new ADs are never going to keep an interim. It's just not going to happen. There's no pre-existing relationship with them. Like they want to distance themselves from what happened in the prior staff. It won't go. I do think Brent Key will be in high demand as an O-line coach, though.
I asked this initially as a joke on a Georgia Tech subject, but I'm kind of wondering if it's real now. Is it possible that everybody on that team just really did not like their coach?
Yes.
Yes, I think so.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, just confidently. Yes.
Because it's not, I know that winning kind of changes the way a team looks and the vibe around it, but just watching that team in the last couple of weeks, it looks like a far more interested team.
So the reason why I would mention Rhule is that a lot of the game plan, or at least as I understand it, that he took to building up Baylor was finding those players that were falling through the cracks in Texas recruiting, that he had a certain, certain types, a certain mold. He was looking for essentially, 3 stars that were going to be able to fit into his system and then be able to play at a championship level with a little bit of development. I know that we talk about, what it's going to take at Georgia Tech, maybe some kind of unique plan like that, where you are maximizing on trying to find kids around Georgia or trying to find kids that are not getting looked at by Notre Dame at some of these private schools that might have the right height, weight, speed, but just might need a little bit of meat or might just need a little bit of training, or we need to flip their position. That might be the unique approach at Georgia Tech. You might not need to go total option on this, but you at least need to have a plan to be able to try to, hit some inefficiencies. And I feel like that was something that Rhule, at least as I understand it, was able to do at Baylor, where he received all the praise that has him as a coveted name in college football to begin with.
Yeah, I agree. I think if Matt Rhule took the Georgia Tech job, good chance that he would do a good job there. It's just, is the Georgia Tech job the one that Matt Rhule's going to want to take based on what's going to be available to him?
Yeah, like I don't think Georgia Tech's a top 40 job in college football right now. So I think Matt Rhule can do better than Georgia Tech. I agree with what Tom says there. And I mean, Chip's point was great. They would take guys who had measurables, but were not good football players yet. And then they really did a great job developing them. Like they
teaching
did
the game.
Yeah, correct. And a lot of staffs want to do that, but they're not actually good at it. Matt Rhule's staff was good at doing that. Like they would go out and they'd be like, I don't really care if the kid can play yet. I want a guy that runs 4.3 and we'll find a way to use him.
6'3", 6'7" wingspan, and he's running this. Yeah, I don't care. Give him a scholarship and we'll figure it out.